In February 1958, a family home in Seaford, Long Island, became the centre of one of America's strangest poltergeist cases. It did not begin with a figure in the hallway, or a voice in the dark, or footsteps crossing an empty room. It began with bottles, caps popping off by themselves, liquid spilled across furniture and floors. A holy water bottle was found open and overturned. Then other things began to move. Figurines flew across rooms, furniture shifted, heavy thumps echoed through the house. And as the disturbances continued, the Herrmann family did what most frightened families would do. They called the police. The police did not make it stop. Soon, reporters, investigators, scientists, and even a priest would be drawn into the house, all trying to explain why ordinary objects seemed to have come alive. The newspaper gave the unseen force a name. They called it Hopper. And for 5 weeks, inside an ordinary suburban home, Hopper made the safe places feel unsafe.
The Genesis GV70, with all its award-winning tech and performance, is built to thrill. So you can hit the road, hit the turns, and hit Sport Plus mode for serious acceleration and handling. Inside, you'll find intuitive tech that elevates every driving experience. And wherever you go, the GV70 will have you on the edge of your seat. It's luxury that's built to thrill. Learn more at Genesis.com and feel the GV70.
Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands you need. From athletic stuff, like a full court pickup game, swish, to athletic-ish stuff, like a half-mile stroll. Get those steps in. And for morning hikes up the mountain trail, good pace. To nighttime ghost stories from the camping chair. What a twist. Whatever level of active, Sierra loves it all. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athletic-ish, Sierra's got it.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods Haunted episode. In this episode, we are going to
Long Island, in the US of A.
Yes, indeedy, we are. Now, this story is it is connected to the main episode. I'm just throwing that out there. They work completely independent of each other, but they are connected. With that being said, I'll get straight into it. Are you ready for the story?
Yes, I am.
In February 1958, the Herrmann family were living in Seaford, Long Island, in what should have been an ordinary suburban home. James and Lucille Herrmann lived there with their 2 children, 13-year-old Lucille and 12-year-old James. Their house was a ranch-style family home, green with white trim, sitting in a modern Long Island suburb. It was not an old mansion, not a ruin, not the kind of place already wrapped in ghost stories. It was a normal family house, occupied by a normal family, in a normal neighbourhood. James Herrmann Sr. worked as an airline representative. His wife, Lucille, was at home with the children. Their son, James, was 12. Their daughter, Lucille, was 13. And at first, there was nothing about the family's life that suggested they were about to become part of one of the most famous American poltergeist cases of the 20th century. The case would later become known as the Seaford Poltergeist. And over time, James Herrmann Jr. would be described as the focus of the disturbances. The first incident happened on 3rd of February. James came home from school and found a ceramic doll and a model ship broken on his dresser, as though one had crashed into the other. Around the same time, Mrs. Herrmann found a small holy water bottle lying on its side with the cap removed and the contents spilled. Then the sounds began. Over the next 45 minutes, the family heard noises from different rooms as bottles opened and spilled by themselves. In one incident, a half-gallon bottle of bleach smashed onto the floor several feet from where James and his mother were standing. Mrs. Herrmann was frightened enough to telephone her husband at work. She told him that something strange was happening in the house. Bottles were not simply falling over. They were, as the story was later repeated, blowing their tops. Nail polish remover, peroxide, rubbing alcohol, liquid starch, bleach and holy water were among the early containers said to have opened or spilled without anyone touching them. That was how the Seaford Poltergeist began. Not with a ghostly figure at the end of a bed, not with footsteps in the hallway, but with bottles opening on their own, liquid spilling across surfaces, and household objects moving with no obvious cause. The press soon gave the unseen force a nickname. They called it Popper. It was a simple name, almost playful, but it came from the thing that made the case so strange in the first place. This was a haunting of screw tops, bottle caps, and ordinary household containers. It was not just that things were breaking. It was that sealed bottles appeared to be uncapping themselves first. Over the next 5 weeks, the disturbances continued. Bottles containing starch, medicine, wine, ammonia, shampoo, antacid, paint thinner, perfume, and ink were all reported to have opened or spilled. Then the activity spread to other objects. Figurines moved, collided, and flew across rooms. Lamps, tables, a phonograph, a dresser, a coffee table, and even a bookcase were said to have shifted, fallen, or overturned. There were also noises. Rumbles passed through the house, described by Lucille as sounding like the walls were caving in. The activity became frightening enough that the family left the house on 4 occasions, staying with friends and relatives for several nights. Police were called, journalists came, investigators arrived. By the end, 67 separate disturbances had been recorded. The disturbances grew. At first, the activity seemed almost absurd. Bottles opened, caps came off, liquid spilled. But the repetition made it frightening. This was not one bottle left badly closed, or one container knocked over by mistake. According to the accounts later gathered, the same kind of incident happened again and again, in different rooms of the house. The house began to feel as though it had turned against the family, through the most ordinary objects inside it. The disturbances then moved beyond bottles. Porcelain and plastic figurines began to shift, collide, and fly across rooms. Some smashed apart. A glass centerpiece was said to have moved more than once. A desk was struck repeatedly by figurines that seemed to have been thrown into it. Then larger things began to be affected. A sugar bowl was said to have flown across a room. A geography globe reportedly hurtled through the hall. A portable phonograph struck the woodwork hard enough to leave a dent. In the basement, a heavy bookcase containing a full set of encyclopedias was found turned upside down. The family heard heavy rumbles through the house, the kind Lucille Herrmann described as sounding as though the walls were caving in. These were not faint taps or little knocks in the night. they were loud enough to send people running from one room to another, only to find something spilled, broken, or moved. The activity frightened the family so much that they left the house several times, staying with friends and relatives for 6 nights in total. By then, Seaford was no longer just a private family problem. The police had been called, and the house on Long Island was about to become famous. Mrs. Herrmann called the police on 9th of February 1958. One of the first officers involved was Patrolman J. Hughes. He was in the living room with the family when the noises were heard coming from the bathroom. When they went to look, a bottle was found lying on its side. Hughes later said he'd already checked the bathroom before the noise, and he was convinced the bottle had not been lying down at that point. That was the strange difficulty of the Seaford case. Again and again, people were not seeing ghosts. They were hearing something happen, entering a room, and finding an object moved. Then Detective Joseph Tozzi of the Nassau County Police was assigned to the case full-time. He interviewed the people who'd been in the house during the disturbances and began building a detailed record of what was happening. Mr. Herrmann had first suspected his son, James. That was a natural suspicion. James was 12 years old, and in many poltergeist cases, the activity appears to centre around a child or teenager in the home. But Mr. Herrmann later described an incident that made him doubt that simple explanation. He was standing in the bathroom doorway while James was brushing his teeth. 2 bottles had been placed on top of the vanity, while the cabinet beneath was being cleaned. According to Mr. Herrmann, both bottles moved at the same time. One moved slowly forward and fell into the sink. The other spun to the side and crashed onto the floor. James, he said, was in front of him. One of the witnesses was a visiting cousin named Marie Merther. She was sitting in the living room with the 2 Herrmann children when she said she saw a figurine begin to wiggle. Then it flew roughly 2 feet towards the television, landing just short of it. When questioned, she insisted that neither she nor the children had been close enough to touch it. Another detailed incident came on 20th of February. Mrs. Herrmann was on the phone in the dining room. James was beside her, putting his books away, and there was a bottle of ink on the table. A loud pop was heard. The ink bottle lost its screw top, left the table, flew into the living room, and spilled ink across a chair, the floor, and the wallpaper near the front door. Mrs. Herrmann called Detective Tozzi. While she waited for him, she took both children into the hallway. A few minutes later, while the 3 of them were standing together, another crash came from the living room. When they went back in, a male figurine had flown into the desk and shattered. No one had been in the room. Other incidents followed the same pattern. A noise would come from another room. Someone would run to look. And there on the floor, against the wall or across the furniture, would be the evidence of something that had just happened. A bottle opened, a cat thrown off, a figurine broken, furniture shifted, liquid spilled across the surface, where moments earlier, everything had been still. Reporters from Newsday, Time, the New York Times, and the London Evening News visited the house. Newsday reporter Dave Kahn was allowed to stay there overnight and reported several disturbances during his visits, including the sound of a dresser falling and a lamp being overturned. The presence of journalists changed the atmosphere around the case. The Herrmann home was no longer simply a frightened family's house. It had become a watched house. Reporters, police officers, neighbours, relatives and visitors came through it, all waiting for the next sound, the next crash, the next bottle cap to fly. At one point, a newspaperman was said to have seen a flashbulb rise from a table and strike the wall. 4 sharp knocks were reported on the kitchen wall. A glass centerpiece was said to have jumped from the dining table to a cupboard. The strangest thing was that incidents did not become grander in the way a ghost story sometimes does. They stayed domestic. It was what made them feel so different. A bottle of ink, a bleached container, a sugar bowl, a child's room, a bathroom cabinet, a figurine on the table. The story was not terrifying because the objects were extraordinary. It was terrifying because they were not. Religion entered the story as well. The Herrmanns were Roman Catholic, and eventually Father William MacLeod of St. William the Abbot Church came to the house. He sprinkled holy water through the rooms and prayed over the home. The visit gave the Seaford case an oldish shape beneath its modern setting. On the surface, this was a 20th century suburban mystery, full of police notes, press coverage, technical explanations and parapsychologists from Duke University. But underneath that, the Herrmann family were still doing what frightened families had done in haunting stories for centuries. They called the police, they called experts, and then they called a priest. Father MacLeod was reportedly concerned enough by what he heard that he applied to his bishop for permission to attempt an exorcism. Whether the disturbances were being thought of as a ghost, a poltergeist, a force, or something connected to the boy, the religious response shows how serious the case had become. There was no longer just a strange little run of broken bottles. The family had left their home several times. Police had been involved, reporters were spending the night, and now a priest had walked through the rooms with holy water. Other explanations were also being considered. One of the more unusual visitors was Robert E. Sider, a technical specialist from Brookhaven National Laboratory. He came with an idea involving water beneath the house and some kind of magnetic disturbance. The theory did not settle the matter, but it shows how wide the search for an explanation had become. People were not only asking whether someone in the house was playing tricks, they were looking at the ground, the water, the air, the walls, the wiring, the plumbing, the structure of the house itself. If the bottles were popping open, could pressure be involved? If objects were falling, could vibration explain it? If the walls rumbled, could aircraft or ground movement have something to do with it? The house was checked and questioned, almost like a suspect. Radio waves were considered, ground movement was considered. Electrical problems, chimney drafts, air circulation, groundwater, structural faults, aircraft vibration, and plumbing vibration were all looked at. None of them gave a clear answer to the full run of events. And still, according to the reports, Popper continued. The case eventually reached the parapsychology laboratory at Duke University. J. Gaither Pratt and William G. Roll were sent to investigate. They visited the house, spoke to the family, examined the incidents, and later published a report in the Journal of Parapsychology. They recorded 67 separate disturbances. Pratt arrived while the case was still active, hoping to witness something himself. But like so many poltergeist investigations, the activity did not simply perform on command. At times the house would quieten, then once attention shifted or people left, something else would happen. The possible explanations were divided into 3 broad areas: physical causes, fraud, and psychokinesis. Physical causes had already been checked: radio waves, ground movement, electrical problems, etc. None of them provided a clear answer. Fraud was also considered. Paranormal acknowledged that many incidents could, in theory, have been faked. James or his sister Lucille could have staged some of the events, especially when nobody else had a clear view of them. But the investigators believe some incidents were harder to explain that way, particularly those where the children were accounted for and not close enough to the objects. Their favoured explanation was recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK. In simple terms, they thought the disturbances might have been unconsciously produced by 12-year-old James Herrmann. Not a ghost exactly, but some kind of unexplained physical effect linked to emotional tension around the boy. Instead of treating the Seaford activity as a spirit haunting in the old-fashioned sense, Paranormal saw it as something centred around a living person. James was not being described by them as deliberately causing it. He was being described as the possible centre of the outbreak, the person around whom the strange physical effects appeared to gather. A magician, Milbourne Christopher, later argued that similar effects could be produced through conjuring, misdirection, and simple trickery. Joe Nichol also suggested that the activity seemed to occur mainly when James was nearby, and that the movements could be explained without anything paranormal. But even skeptical explanations did not stop the case from becoming famous. Seaford had already entered poltergeist history. As February turned into March, the disturbances began to lose their force. There were still incidents, there were still noises, there were still bottles and objects reported out of place, but the sense of escalation had passed. The final recorded incident came on 10th of March 1958. A bleach bottle was found uncapped and moved after a loud thump. Then the activity stopped. For the Herrmann family, the whole thing had lasted a little over 5 weeks. For everyone else, it became one of the most talked about poltergeist cases of the 20th century. An ordinary family, a modern suburban house, a 12-year-old boy at the centre of it, police called to the scene, reporters sleeping overnight, a priest blessing the rooms, scientists and parapsychologists searching for an answer, objects flying, bottles opening, furniture overturning, and sounds coming from rooms where nobody was supposed to be. Years later, the Seaford poltergeist would be linked to Poltergeist, not because the film copied the case directly, but because both stories lived in the same kind of place. The danger was not in a castle or an old graveyard. It was in the family home, the safe place, the ordinary place, the place where no one expects the walls to rumble, the furniture to move, or bottles to open by themselves in another room. Before Carol Ann spoke through the television, before Hollywood gave the suburban haunting its most famous image, the Herrmann family had already lived through 5 strange weeks in Seaford. And whatever was happening inside that house, it made ordinary things feel suddenly alive.
OptumRx is driving an industry-first transparency model. For plan sponsors, it means a model designed with easy-to-understand, predictable pricing. For consumers, it's clearer experiences that bring cost transparency, affordability, and choice. Learn more at optum.com/transparency.
The Genesis GV70, with all its award-winning tech and performance, is built to thrill. So you can hit the road, hit the turns, and hit Sport Plus mode for serious acceleration and handling. Inside, you'll find intuitive tech that elevates every driving experience. And wherever you go, the GV70 will have you on the edge of your seat. It's luxury that's built to thrill. Learn more at Genesis.com and feel the GV70.
The name Popper does make it sound kind of cute and harmless, but I'm sure if you were experiencing your tomato ketchup flying everywhere, it wouldn't seem quite as harmless.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that.
No. Like I said, it is connected to the main episode, which is about the Poltergeist curse, the film, The Poltergeist. So I've done a bit of a deep dive into that for the main episode. I just think it's really fascinating, and reading through like how people get a kind of inspiration for movies as well was also interesting, which apparently it was this case in Long Island, and also another, well, not case, an episode of The Twilight Zone. Steven Spielberg, I mean, his films are amazing. Generally, I prefer his older ones. I've got to be honest with that. Goonies, give me that. That was Spielberg, wasn't it? Yeah.
Film.
E.T., you know, I love all those types of films. But just thinking about how he thought, yeah, I just want a really scary ghost story, not in a castle, not in an old haunted house, but in a modern suburban home. And at the time, that would have been really different, because ghost stories would have been like, you know, in a castle, or I'm thinking about Hammer, so in a castle mainly, or an old stately home, those places. So it's just really interesting that he came up with that concept. And then from that, I can only assume that a lot of other horror was born. And Poltergeist is an amazing film, the first one. The second one really did scare me, and that poor guy, I didn't realise he had cancer. Oh, I'm going too far and saying too much, because that's in the next episode. Yeah.
Spoil it.
Rein it in, sir. So we'll stop there. Anyway.
Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for that episode. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Let's be real. Living on campus comes with plenty of compromises. Tiny dorm rooms, 0 closet space, a roommate who does yoga at 3 a.m. But lucky for you, that's where the settling ends. With HomeSense. Premium bedding, stylish storage, standout decor. All at prices that encourage overpacking, not overspending. HomeSense, the home of no compromise. Part of the HomeGoods family.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Introducing Taco Bell's new Jalapeno Citrus Salsa. With bright citrus, real red jalapenos, guajillo chiles. Usually, you add sauce to the food, but when the sauce is this good, the food is just there to get the sauce to your mouth. That rolled quesadilla, not a rolled quesadilla anymore. Now it's a sauce shovel. Taco Bell's Jalapeno Citrus Salsa. Get it with any item on the Cantina Chicken menu while it's here. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only. While supplies last. Contact store for availability.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.